All right. First of all, I want to tell you in the description below, there is a PDF that I've combined the four Gospels together and showed you each verse where I got them, and it'll be in chronological order. I put up 250 videos maybe about explaining how I did every editing in the text. Now, the thing here is this is about Robert Barron, how he falsely teaches about explaining life after death. Right off the bat, he's going to tell you that in the Hebrew text, there is very little about the truth of life after death.
It might surprise you to hear this. It surprises a lot of religious people, but the view that there is nothing after this life for us was actually commonly held throughout much of the Old Testament period. If you look at the text of the Old Testament, you'll find some that begin to make a sort of tentative reference of an afterlife or toward life after death. But a lot of the Old Testament, the standard view was, that death is the end, and we go back into the earth.
Okay. Let me tell you about Cain and Abel, how our Creator defines that you're going to have life after death. You can't get more authoritative than that. When our Creator's, when Cain killed Abel, our Creator came and talked to him, and he told him that, I hear your brother's voice calling to me from the ground. Now, the word ground is wrong. It should be under the ground. And then there would be this another space and time dimension that they call Sheol. I call it the abyss, where all souls were going to after they died, or the body died on earth. Okay? You can't get more of a statement to say who's telling us that we have life after death than our Creator. Now, this is taught to all Israelis starting in their childhood, okay? Genesis taught to them as the beginning of how they come about, all right? Now, what we're going to do here is listen to what he's going to say now about using the Psalms, that your body turns into dust, kind of like saying you don't have a soul, but he doesn't have that quite correct, but let me explain.
When the psalmist, for example, prays to the Lord, well, can dust give you praise? The point he's making is, well, yeah, now that I'm alive, I can give you praise, but dust, once I'm gone, I can't give you any praise.
Okay. Now, there you heard it, that when you go into the ground, your body turns to dust. And he doesn't believe there's a soul with your body, because otherwise he would have told you about our Creator's teaching that life exists after death. But it doesn't mean that doesn't mean that when your soul goes into the abyss, you can't stop praising and honoring our Creator. This psalm is about while you were living, that it is our honor to speak about our Creator and Jesus and what's going to happen after we leave our body. It's our glory to speak this, okay? So, but to say there is no life after, he's going to start using what's known as the second book of Maccabees, and he's going to say that this is in the Hebrew text. To be fair, he's going to say later that he knows it's not, that it's a book that the church teaches from to teach the Bible, okay? But it is the most correct way to teach of the example of life after death, and that is to have this bodily form again. Now, what I'm going to do is let that play, and then I'm just going to put a clip, and then I'm going to get to the story of what I want you to hear about, of him explaining the story in the Maccabees about a mother and 7 sons who are going to be punished. So the punishment is getting their hands cut off and their tongue cut off for not eating pork. But one of the sons is going to be arguing that you can cut off my hands because I'm going to receive them again. And that's what he's going to refer to back in the bodily form, which makes no sense right now when he says it. But later I put in the clip where he's going to talk about that being that they knew that they're going to be like Jesus's resurrection, but they didn't know about Jesus' resurrection because this story happens before Jesus comes to sent to earth.
Well, our first reading for today, is from the second book of Maccabees, and it's one of the most extraordinary texts in the Old Testament because it's one of the relatively few Old Testament passages that clearly indicate the existence of life after death. No, they're offering their hands and their tongues, or cut their tongues out, their limbs, their very bodies, in the hope that they will receive them again.
Okay, I read the Bible. I know about Sheol or the abyss, but I want to explain something. Our Creator promised David through his sons will be a son that is born, and he will have a kingdom in heaven forever. This verse states that we're going to live in heaven with our Creator. Okay, so this is the explanation why we're going to go to heaven, because Jesus is going to be a great king by obeying our Creator the most. He's going to be our highest male on earth. And remember, the same guy that you're listening to here is teaching you there's a Trinity. So I can go through that someday and show you all the differences and incorrect. Just like this, it wouldn't be saying that our Creator lied by telling David this story. So through his sons it will be born. Now, this is the only verse in the Bible that tells us that if we obey our Creator, we will enter into Jesus's kingdom. And every Israeli was taught this from David's time. So there's a lot more text in the Hebrew of where you're going to live after our body dies. But he doesn't teach these verses for our soul after life. But what he is going to all of a sudden start teaching is that the body, when it dies, is then going to have a higher pitch of perfection.
The risen life, so here's the interesting point. The risen life they're anticipating is not a purely spiritual one. Not Plato's fantasy of a disembodied existence. Rather, it's one that involves the body raised to a higher pitch of perfection.
Okay. Now, you heard him say raised to a higher pitch of perfection. But you notice that he tied it to a pagan Platonic view, and that's how the Christians see it, but that's what he's saying is not in the Bible. So whatever our Creator promised David, that's not true, okay? That's what he's teaching here. But he's now going to start teaching us that the Christians are hoping that there's going to be their resurrection of the body like Jesus. But again, where will it be?
You know, I think there are an awful lot of Christians who hold to something that's more Platonic than biblical. What I mean is they tend to think of the afterlife as the soul escaping from the body and going up to this purely spiritual place called heaven. But see, that's not the object of Christian hope. What do we hope for? Not a disembodied, purely spiritual existence. We hope for the resurrection of the body. You know, I think there are an awful lot of Christians who hold to something that's more Platonic than biblical. What I mean is they tend to think of the afterlife as the soul escaping from the body and going up to this purely spiritual place called heaven. But see, that's not the object of Christian hope. What do we hope for? Not a disembodied, purely spiritual existence. We hope for the resurrection of the body.
Okay, you heard it. Just the resurrection of the body when you die, but he doesn't explain this part to you. of what he means by this death. And then he's deceiving you because the way he lives his life is not like you who read the Bible and read the text literally to find out about life. He's trying to teach you how the church wants to teach you from the forefathers long time ago, and how they are going to interpret the text, not that you are supposed to believe the text at all. In fact, I made a small video about him saying this, that he tells us that you're not supposed to read the text literally, but take it from them because they're more teaching it in an authoritative way, and they are teaching Jesus as a myth, okay? And now they want to teach Jesus as a logos, which is all science. Whatever man finds, they're going to start tying to Jesus. But this next part that's coming up in the video is going to try to now put the cutting off of the body parts to Jesus's resurrection, which to us would mean like when he's walking and talking to the disciples after he returned.
Now, in Christ's resurrection from the dead, we see this now on full display. But how wonderful that in this story from Maccabees, it's anticipated. These 7 brothers are giving voice to this very deep hope, to a truly resurrected life. Okay, against that background, that's why the church gave us this reading, see, as the first reading, because we're meant now to look at our gospel in light of it. The setting is a conversation, pretty heated, I imagine, between the Sadducees and Jesus. Now, who were the Sadducees? Well, they were a kind of a political religious party within Judaism, and they had a lot of characteristics. But one of their characteristics was they, and again, to be fair, in line with the mainstream of a lot of the Old Testament tradition, they did not believe in life after death.
Okay, I can't find that understanding in the text at all about how the Sadducees are. So let me put up here text that has the word Sadducees, and this is Strong's Concordance from the the King James Version, and it talks about a follower of a certain heretical sect among the Israels. And what I can point to you is there is text that John says, and I didn't get that for the video, sorry about that, but the Pharisees and Sadducees are going to come together, and he's going to describe them as a brood of vipers, meaning they're together, they're like snakes, but they're just 2 different breeds. And if we use it as this here, now we're saying that the Pharisees and these Sadducees are 2 groups of different views on life, and not according to the text like we read in the Bible, but like what he's doing, just talking about nonsense here. So let's take a look at how Jesus teaches us what the word Pharisees is. And I do this a lot with the Bible text. I will take all the words together, and then I'll go through the verses to find out which one is the strongest to say what this word really truly is. And here Jesus is telling us that they set themselves in the seat of Moses. That's judges. Okay, so here they're going to say judges or lawgivers, okay, by judging. So these are judges. And then they love to sit in the front seat of the synagogue. Well, if they're off sect, they'd have their own little place that they're going to meet at. But no, they are here in front of the church. And if they're judges, they're just trying to say we're important and we have status. So the thing here is this is what Jesus is pointing out. But John says they're together. So you can say that if you have judges, you have to have lawyers, okay? So that's how I define Sadducees and Pharisees. Now the story here is he's going to say that Jesus even believes in resurrection. So that's how he's going to tie this together now.
Well, Jesus, they can guess from his preaching, does indeed believe in the resurrection. And so they pose to him, and they probably brought their most clever people forward. So the Sadducees posed this famous case. There's this woman who marries a series of 7 brothers, and each brother dies. Okay, so now the woman dies, and they go to the afterlife. Well, whose wife is she? Who's her husband? She married all 7. Reductio ad absurdum. If you really believe in this life after death, then how do you make sense of this kind of situation? Well, Jesus is having none of it. He declares clearly and strongly his belief in life after death, in the resurrection. And what's his first evidence? Moses, so at the very heart of the Old Testament, speaks of God as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. God is not a God of the dead, but of the living. So by Moses' time, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were long, long dead. And yet, God is described as being the God of these 3 men. How's that possible unless, in some sense, these 3 men are still alive?
Okay. Now, I have to explain something here about the story of the 7, because it puts to the point of my telling you that they're lawyers. There was a law that our Creator gave that if once they're married, and if the husband dies, that she is to marry with his brother until a son is born, and then go back onto the land and live on the land so his name is not lost from the inheritance land. And to say that this happened 7 times, this means the other brothers would have had wives, so there would have been a lot more. So the story that you quickly read, that doesn't really make truthful sense when you understand the law. But you can see that it's asking a question about this law that they want to know, that we can say that for truth positive that she is going to be this male's wife, and yet that isn't the way the law actually is taught, that she'll be the wife of her first husband that she married with. But the thing here is in heaven, no, there is no sex, there's no belly buttons, you just have a soul. And the other funny thing here is Jesus didn't need to refer to Moses. Jesus was teaching his gospel. That means the word gospel is using wrong when I say the gospel, Matthew, gospel, Mark, Luke, and John. Jesus says he is teaching his gospel, which means Jesus was telling them that he is the one that they are waiting for from David. He is David's son who is going to have a kingdom in heaven, and you're supposed to listen to me, obey me. And he did give us more commands, such as the one at the bottom here of the video. So the thing here is that Jesus was teaching his gospel as he's going to die and there's going to be an afterlife. And if you want to live with me in your afterlife, obey our Creator at the most as you can. Put our Creator first, then put your family second, then you third. But the thing here is this guy is going to start teaching Jesus in something about a heavenly realm, and he's going to tell you about that heavenly realm here.
How's he further answer the Sadducees? In the heavenly realm, people will not marry or be given in marriage. So he just cuts the dilemma, out from under his feet. But how come? Because marriage is a bad thing? Because we can't wait to get up beyond this world of bodies and sexuality and marriage and go to a higher spiritual space? No. Because in the heavenly realm, which is an embodied realm, Jews would never think of it any other way. In the heavenly realm, we will love in a manner so intense that it goes beyond even this most intense expression of love here below that we call marriage. Not that something less than marriage is on display in heaven, but rather something much greater than marriage. There'll be an intimacy with one another that's possible because we are so intimately joined to God and through God to each other. So people will not marry or be given in marriage because something so much greater than marriage is on display in heaven. Can I make a final point here, everybody, as I close?
Okay. Now that's really false teaching. And I don't know if any Christian believes that's what you're supposed to believe. Okay. We better trust our Creator's promise to David. That's why we'll enter into heaven. Our Creator tells us that after our body dies, we still have a soul and it's going to go somewhere. Now, after Jesus' body died, we are to tell the truth about Jesus as a shouting to everyone to the end of the earth that if you obey our Creator, you will have a life after death with Jesus in heaven, meaning divided away from those that are evil and not obedient to our Creator. I have made a few videos like this about him. I'm going to keep continuing making videos about him. I'm going to do them better like this one. I didn't make them as good as this one, but I'm using this guy because he's a bishop. Now, I think he said he's been teaching for 38 years and been a bishop for 9. That means this is the stuff he's got memorized from all those times he's been teaching the church's way, the forefathers, or the forefathers of the church, and use other books outside of the Bible to tell you what's in the Bible. So that, I think, should wake up a few Christians. And as you can tell, I've done that video, or those hundreds of videos about putting the 4 Gospels together. I think when you read that, you're going to be very surprised because it's going to tell you in order what happened, and it's also going to tell you where Jesus picked up actually the 12 disciples. So with that, I will be making another video. Hopefully I'll be putting them out on Sunday morning because I've got other things to do. I'm still working on finding the first writer's formats on the Hebrew side, which I've done maybe 300 of those videos over every verses of the books that I'm using. And right now I'm in the final stage of trying to tape the text and mesh it together. I'm still moving things around, but another month or 2, hopefully that will be a completed book, and then I'll match the book below into the bottom of that, and we'll have one complete story from beginning to end. And there you go. Talk to you next Sunday.